We're on to design now, and design is hard. Here's the high-level requirement. You have to establish, implement, and maintain a design process. And that means there are process inputs and process outputs and steps. There's no requirement for this to be the same for all projects, so there are options. This is complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Here's the problem with auditing design. This comes under the category of auditor rant, if you must know. 95% of these people are alpha males, or at least used to be. They're Myers-Briggs INTJ or INTP, which means they're brilliant, but not particularly forthcoming with information. They treat the world differently and vice versa. Here's the basic design model. There are customer requirements, and in ISO 9001, there's a requirement to retain records. There can be one or more iterative design steps, each of which may require records, and a design output step which requires records. The input and output records have to be in agreement and changes documented. There has to be some sort of review of all of this as determined in the design plan. Once the design is verified and validated and meets the initial requirements, then you're good. In ISO, the design process is free form. There's no requirement for all design projects to be the same. It allows the organization to define the stages, reviews, if any, and authority, even if all of the authority is in the designer. It does require records of some type in each step, so make sure the customer requirements are captured for sure. It allows the organization, that's you, to determine the review requirements and who has the authority and responsibility to approve the project. All it wants you to do is define all of this up front in your system somewhere. It can be done on an individual project or as part of a system. You need at least one ISTJ on the team who is methodical and tidy. So here's the list of things that you shall consider. The nature and complexity of the design, the required stages, the verification activities and means of controlling the documents, responsibility and authority, and internal and external resource needs. And here's some more. Interfaces between persons, involvement of customers, if any, extent of customer approval needed, if any, requirements for provision of products, that is to say, ultimately, can you make and sell it? Documented information needed as evidence for all of this is defined up in the front. There are different methodologies that are popular for all of this: StageGate, Agile, PERT, CPM, and others. If you do enough projects that are similar enough, you could generalize this if you want. There are design platforms that do these steps for you with workflows for all the sign-offs. Here are your design inputs. Your shall here is to determine again. You have to determine the requirements essential for the specific types of products and services to be designed and developed. There's a list of these things, and there's some expectation of how to document them. And this is mainly about the operating expectation of whatever it is you're designing. And it's not really all that unreasonable. So once you have a process developed, namely a plan, all you have to do is follow the plan, including retain the documented information that you required yourself to have in the first place. And that includes the verification activities and the validation activities that you decided in the beginning that you were going to need. So the only problem here is defining the plan, defining the controls, and defining the records. This is one of these old memes from the 80s. The intent of this is to align the finished product with what the customer originally wanted and document that you did so. So here are your design and development outputs. In this case, you shall ensure that the outputs meet the requirements, are adequate for the subsequent processes, that is, can be translated into work instructions or something similar so that the plant can make it. They can be measured somehow as to meeting the spec, that you have to specify the characteristics that are essential for the intended purpose. And you have to retain documented information on all of this as required in your design plan. So I, the auditor, will go into the design plan, see if you've determined this in the beginning, and we'll look for a record of where you accomplished what you set out to do. And if all that lines up, the auditor, won't ask too many questions. Here's your catch-all clause for the design and development changes. It basically requires you to reconcile the difference between the expected input and expected output and find the documented information that authorized the change. And of course, that needs to match up with the authorized change control protocol that you established in the design plan. Simple, right? No, it's not simple.